Hi, everyone. What's today? Happy Wednesday. I, I emailed someone and said happy Thursday this morning, and they said, it, Kim, are you okay? Wednesday. And I said, oh, okay. Anyway, I guess we will, I don't know if my ticker here says no one's on right now, but they usually take a few minutes. Hi, whoever just joined us. I will introduce myself. I am Kim, and I am coming to you. I thought we should do this, John. I'm coming to you from Lodi, California. And I go by K and B. Mickey is here, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, I'm also happy here that Mickey's here and Christy's here.
Okay, yes. Hey guys.
I'm John Ivy, and I'm coming to you live from downtown Sacramento, California, which is a little bit of a distance from Lodi, but I feel very close to Lodi doing this series and working with Kim so much.
Yeah.
I never go out anyway anymore. I'm never in Sacramento. I'm always in here in this bubble.
Yeah, you live in your bubble right now. I think we're all in the COVID bubble right now. So John, can you believe it? Tonight is this is our sixth live in our little series event. And so can you believe it? 6 lives. What do you think? I think, I'm really excited. Thank you guys all for joining us. And I'm like I kind of feel some kind of way. I'm having some emotions about like wrapping up our first series. Yeah. So I guess I'll turn it back over to you because I'm feeling kind of emotional.
Like Kim said, we've done this series of why they don't want you to vote for this election, and this is going to be our last episode in that series. We hope to keep working together and do more things. But it is kind of bittersweet. I'm a little happy to be done with something.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
I'm going to be even happier next month when the election's done. I'm not one of those people going, oh, I can't wait until the election's over so that I can turn off all this news and think about something else. Because I will keep thinking about all of this stuff and keep working. And that's something we have to try to get other people on board with too. Is that actually no matter who wins the presidential election, there's still going to be work to do in November, December, January, February, March, on and on and on.
Like John said, I just want to say we don't hope to continue to work together. We will be continuing to work together. Hi, thank you guys for joining us. And so I thought, I would just kind of talk a little bit about and just end with telling you guys like why we started this, right? And just talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. This live series came out of a desire to just truly inform the community Lodi and the broader, California, San Joaquin County, of the importance of voting. I firmly believe, and this is just my opinion, that, sometimes the way that it's structured makes it a little bit inaccessible to people that truly want to know, like, what, right? The reason why I named the series Why They Don't Want You to Vote is because I personally, and there's a lot of data that backs this up, that shows that voter suppression is real, and that there is a strategic effort to discourage people from voting. And I also thought, like I've shared with you guys before, based on how I grew up, just being very transparent about, what I know, what I don't know, and us learning together in an honest kind of conversation is why I'm here. And, I'm really fortunate enough to, along this journey, have come alongside John. And we just, it is both of our heart's desire to really just inform the public and just do what we can to be citizens and to encourage civic engagement. And so, not to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I want to say, okay, now we're here. It is 12 days or 13 days? I can't even remember, before the election. And I just want to say to all of you guys that the work doesn't stop. We still have, elected officials, regardless of whoever wins, that we need to hold accountable. We need to stay engaged in our community. We need to stay informed, and we need to stay educated so that we can really have meaningful change in our cities, in our communities, in our children's schools. And so I just really encourage you all to keep going, keep learning, keep asking questions, keep showing up to those city council meetings that are available to you. Keep checking in with your, state senators, and finding out what's going on in your community and how these decisions impact you. And I also wanted to kind of say, we've talked a lot about October 19th and how October 19th was the last day to register to vote. And John and I were talking on Saturday, and we realized that we probably didn't make it clear to the audience that, of course, it's California, so it's a little complicated. And so I'm going to be really honest. I am not even going to explain it how it is explained by our government, because I think the term conditional voter registration is like too much. So I want to tell you guys, like, okay, so it's October 21st. What happens if you know someone who has not registered to vote? No fear. There's still time, because California has same day voter registration. But how it's going to work because of the global pandemic, and John, please correct me if I misspeak. Because there are voting centers that are going to be opening up throughout California. I've provided you guys with the locations for our community specifically, but you can actually register to vote in those. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me take a step back. You can go into Stockton right now, into the San Joaquin County Voter of Registrar's office, and register to vote. Right? It is not time for you to receive a mail ballot, but you can go and you can get yourself registered. If you don't have a way to Stockton, no worries. Or your local community, on 3 days before election opens, starting October 31st, there will be voting centers throughout California in your community where you can walk in, you can register to vote, and you can vote. So that's going to be October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd, right? So, and then you have, obviously on election day, November 3rd, you can also register. So I just really want to encourage everyone to know that all is not lost. You can still register to vote. If you hear the term conditional voter registration, that's a whole different conversation that John and I maybe we'll talk about later. But you can still vote. Your friends can still vote. It is not the end. John, anything you wanted to add?
Definitely. That's 100% right. And I mean, the only thing that changed with that voter registration deadline really is that it's just not as easy to register and vote. Now that the deadline's passed, you can't go on the website and register to vote online. You'll have to go in person and do it. Which you generally you need to eventually fill out the ballot anyway, which you can't do directly online. So yeah, we basically have same day registration, and whenever you hear conditional voter registration, it just gets confusing.
It's so confusing. Like, it's so confusing. I still get confused, and I know what it is. So.
And then I wanted to talk about how it's going so far, because we no longer have election day; we have election month. And this is California. So far, 23% of people have that they got a ballot have voted. So we sent out 21 million ballots to people. Close to 5 million, so 4.8 million have come back. And so there's still 16 million people that can vote. And then another probably 5 million or so that are eligible but aren't registered. And so there's we have 40 million people, only 21 million got votes. Now a lot of those are kids and non-citizens, but there's still around 5 million people who just haven't heard the good word about voting yet. And so there will be people in your community that aren't registered, they don't have a ballot, but they'll still have an opportunity to go on or before election day and vote.
And you know what, John? I'm one of those people. I still have my ballot because I am weird and it's just like important to me to vote on election day. Like, I don't know. It's so weird. So I'm thinking like, oh God, what if I die? Or like, what if something happens? I still want to cast my ballot, but like my ballot is still here. I have not voted yet.
Yeah, I've actually not voted yet either because a number one reason is that I actually keep a mailbox in a different city in Davis, California, is where I receive my mail. So I'm registered to vote here, but I have all my mail go there, and I just haven't gone out there and picked up my ballot yet. I made it very difficult for myself. And another option I have is that I could go to one of the vote centers that are open around here and just say, I don't want to go and get that ballot. Give me a new one, and they'll do that for me. And just wanted to talk demographics just a second because we have this up. Is that the elderly are still the most consistent voters. So if you look at the middle of that chart, you can see that 38% of people over 65 have already voted. Whereas people between the ages of 18 and 34, that's only 13%. And so we have this great divide basically between people over 50 and under 50. The people over 50 vote. That's what this shows us. And the people under 50, it's a much smaller percentage. And then this, I meant to say, this is data that you can look up on Political Data Inc. So politicaldata.com.
Yes, Mickey, this is California. Sorry, John. Mickey was asking, is this California?
Yeah, so this is for all of California. They also have on this site that you can drill down to a county or a district and look at the returns there. It's really interesting stuff. Here, let me put the link in the chat. So people have that. All right, so that was one thing I wanted to show, that cool demographics thing. And then I wanted to, what I just told Kim about before we started, I wanted to talk real quick, is that I have up on the Voter Access Project website a listing of all the videos that we've made, all like 9 hours of content, but I've broken it down so that you can click to a specific part in each video on the different topics that we've covered. And so if you want to learn about the city council members, you can just click this link and go straight to it. If you just want to hear about Proposition 15, you click that and it'll get you right to the part in the video where we talk about it. And so that I will also put a link to in the chat. It's just voteraccess.org/vote2020. And you can get all the cool content that you guys have seen just in a way that's more digestible than sitting through 9 hours of us talking.
But we're fun. I'm just kidding. No one has 9 hours to sit. But yeah, John, first of all, thank you so much. You guys, John is like, he's like a man of many talents. And so not only has he handled all of our tech, I mean, that's great. I wouldn't even know the first step to get that started. But to keep I know, like Mickey, right? When he just told me that before we started, I didn't even know. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So this is a great resource for some of your friends, right? Like if they might have questions. I'm so thankful that he put this together. I kind of wanted to, obviously tonight is our last night and we're wrapping up our series on propositions. And before we get into like the final things that we want to talk about, I just want to give some friendly reminders for returning your ballot and how to track your ballot. So again, I'm going to use this example This is, sorry, like I'm bad at the camera here. This is my roommate's ballot, right? You want to make sure that your ballot is signed, right? You want to make sure that it is sealed when you are returning it to the election office. And then also you can track your ballot. John will go ahead and link that. And the importance of that is, and John can help me out a little bit on this, that when they this whole process of like how they count the ballots and process the ballots is actually very intense. And so when you hear a lot about voter fraud and all of those things, like California has very strict measures in place to ensure that even if someone has received two ballots, that it is not counted twice. And also when they're processing your ballot, they're comparing your signature to when you register to vote. I don't know yet how to thoroughly explain all that process, and that's not what I want to do now. But tracking your ballot lets you know if there's any problems, right? For those of you guys who have voted early, this is great. So if there is a problem with your ballot, if for any reasons it's rejected, there's still sufficient time to get it corrected and ensure that your vote counts. So John is so graciously linked that in there. So it's voteca.gov. So again, make sure that you are keeping track of your ballot and you're ensuring that it processed correctly. The ballots need to be postmarked by November 3rd. Also, a friendly reminder, just because you were mailed a ballot does not mean you have to mail it back. You can take your ballot, you can drop it off at any of the voting centers or drop boxes. The other thing that I want to say is that I didn't talk about is what happens if you make a mistake. Let's say you're watching this great content and you're like, shoot, I changed my mind. Like, no worries. You can actually go in to the voting centers on election day or those 3 days prior and do what's called surrender or spoil your ballot. I don't want to get into the difference of what it means, but it means plain and simple, if you make a mistake, no worries, you can get a new ballot. If your kid, spills coffee all over your ballot, you can go in and you can get a new ballot. So just, we hadn't talked about that, and I just wanted to say that. But now what I'd love to do is kind of get into our last kind of, not last, but the end of this series and the final propositions. So I've talked a lot and I don't want to talk anymore right now. So I'm going to hand it over to John and have him lead us to our good discussion tonight we're going to have. Are you guys excited? Tell me, like, yeah, it's good to know. Yeah, I definitely, it's something I probably should have said really early, but no fret, I actually didn't know that for a long time. I was a voter for probably almost 10 years before I found that out, and it was because literally, I'm not even gonna lie, I spilled the milkshake on my ballot. I'm not even gonna lie. And it just, anyway, we'll talk about that another day. But really, true story.
A lot of people don't know that you can get a new ballot if you make a mistake. A lot of people don't know that you don't have to fill out the whole ballot. You can fill out what you want. There's a lot of just unknowns that people light up their face when you tell them. But yeah, you can get another ballot. you're good to go.
You are human. You do make mistakes, and they will grant you, just to let you know, up to 3 times you can make a mistake, but 3 strikes and you're out is the rule.
Well, at that point, you have to go beg somebody. A judge might give you an exception, but that poll worker will tell you, you're done.
Yeah, I was that poll worker for 14 years. So 7 elections, and I'm like, no. I'm sorry, get your life together. So no, you're not getting another ballot. I've really had that happen. I'm like, no, sorry. I told you on the first time that you only get 3 times, and then you did it twice and you did it 3 times. So no. So it's not a pretty conversation. But anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, John.
Okay, so we're going to talk today first about Prop 16. Which is our affirmative action proposition. This would allow diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. And what this is really doing is undoing a previous constitutional amendment, Proposition 209, way back in 1996. And in 1996, they passed this law, and it basically outlawed what we call affirmative action, which is taking into consideration someone's race or national origin in deciding as a part of a decision of hiring or letting into a college is one of our biggest things, or in government contracting. And so things that we're talking about would be processes like giving out government contracts to businesses that are run by minority owners, Black owners, as giving them bonus points on that bidding process. Right now would be illegal under 209. When somebody applies to college, you can't adjust their score based on these diversity qualifications. Just to history this a bit, the history of the United States is a history of racism, systemic racism, explicit racism. And today we still see that the results of that racism continuing on into how we segregate in housing, how we segregate in economics, in wealth, how there's huge disparities on access to college, access to opportunities, and then huge disparities resulting from the lack of access to the lack of college degrees and stuff like that. So wanting to fix basically this broken system means looking at things such as race and going, oh, well, this is something that we need to consider so that we can fix it. And that's the push of this amendment, which would affect our state constitution. Overall, we have kind of a constitutional debate about our anti-racism. And there's one school of thought that is anti-racism is what we call anti-subordination. And so what we want to do is stop people from being treated badly because of their skin. And another school of thought is what we call colorblindness, which is to treat everyone as if they have the same skin color, to basically ignore race and to treat everyone the same. And so that colorblindness would dictate that, well, you can't take race into consideration in these decisions because we want to be colorblind. We want to pretend like each applicant is just the same skin color, coming from the same background, and we'll consider other things like how they did on a test, or how much money their previous school had, or where they live. We'll consider those things, but we won't consider race. But if you're an anti-subordinationist, if you believe the 14th and 15th Amendments were about undoing this systemic racism, then you might support a proposition like this, which would seek to undo those past harms by actually looking at them and considering race and going, oh, well, this disparate impacted people, this group of people that aren't getting into colleges at a rate that they should be, aren't getting the college degrees that they should be getting, that we want to look at them and see if we can find ways to close that gap and lift them up. And that's the basics of affirmative action and the debate around this amendment. What this amendment won't do is override the kind of colorblindness that comes from our federal constitution. But what it will do is allow California to actually move up to the line that the United States Supreme Court has set.
And just, John, I want to make sure you're done. I had just a
Yeah,
couple of things that
yeah,
I
I
wanted to
ramble. That's what I
Oh,
do.
okay. So I've gotten a lot of questions about this proposition, and I definitely want to just kind of it's a little bit confusing because when it says use race as a factor, I've had 3 friends reach out to me and say that they didn't understand and they were worried about like discrimination occurring, because now we're looking at race. But the reality is that when we abolished abolished or got rid of the previous legislation, because there was this presumption that because of the 14th Amendment in our Constitution, that people would garner the same rights, right? That if we just kind of went to being colorblind, like we would see minorities having the same access to universities and government contracts as everyone else. But what we've seen, like the reason why this is back on the ballot is that there's actually been a decline, right? And so using race as a factor, if you are an advocate, right, of those that equality and equity piece of it, would be a good thing. And again, like John was saying, if you are against that, right, then you will want to vote no on this proposition. So I also wanted to kind of make sure you call out too, this is specifically for government, right? Government and universities and the contracts. So there was a concern. I had a question about like discrimination against white people and all of that. We still have the EEOC that handles all of those things. And this is again to use race as a quota for admissions and government contracts. So again, don't fear that there will be some rampant discrimination of white people, because what we've seen is that they are thriving and they are being accepted to universities, and minorities are not, with the elimination of affirmative action. So that is essentially the gist on Proposition 16. Like,
Yeah.
no
Well, and
harm will come.
I would say also that this isn't a proposition that implements an affirmative action plan.
Right.
So this doesn't force any agencies or schools, public to do this. This allows them to do it. So professionals, elected officials, people who are trying to solve these problems right now, their hands are a little tied, and this will loosen that knot and allow them to do these things. It doesn't force them. So democracy takes place in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. This is again one of those points where they have to ask our permission first before they even have the ability to do something. So I want to echo the you do if you're a white guy, and it's always a white guy going, I don't like this racism against the white people. I don't think that'll work out. You really, like, that is just not going to happen. I know we pulled up the graphic before and I didn't point it out, but the largest voting bloc in California is white people. And so it's not like you're ever going to suffer the fate of what white people have done to minorities in this country. That or at least not anytime in the next 100 years will you ever have to worry about it. Also, on this bill, what I have up on the screen is this is a proposition that was put on the ballot by the legislature. So they are the ones that want to amend the Constitution. And you can see the margins that it passed at, that 3 out of every 4 senator and 60 assembly members all voted for this. The governor signed it. Just overwhelming support for this from our representatives that we've elected.
Yeah. Good additional content there, John. Some good call outs there, my buddy. So yes.
So yeah, that's top 16 basically. We could go over it, like we could have dove into stats about college admissions and stuff like that, but suffice it to say that it's just not like there's a disparate level of service that we're getting from universities and colleges that we need to see more Black and other minorities have access to education and have the results and be able to get good government contracts, be able to move wealth in this country towards a less segregated position. That we should all probably be working towards that, whether or not this is the way to do it or a colorblind solution that you might come up with as the way to do it. The problem is definitely there.
And yeah, and I think another point to think about is like the why, like what happens next. So there's a lot of data that also shows that by passing this proposition, that it will help the Black and Brown community get into the middle class, right? And because obviously going to college and opens up a lot of different avenues in a person's life. But I also kind of want to just briefly talk about the fact that, like, how did we get here, right? And we have proven, when it comes to like funding our schools, there is definitely a disparity amongst how different neighborhoods receive funding for schools and education. And so when you're thinking about like the broader picture in advancing yourself into college, right? If you have went to a school that has been underserved and underfunded, and you have been not have access to all of the things for people in different educational environments and neighborhoods, right, then you can see how there is a disparity where certain groups are being accepted to colleges at a higher rate, and maybe there's a group of people that have been forgotten about, right? And so when you're thinking about like the pros and the cons on these propositions, it's just one layer to think about, like, why do we need this legislation? Like, what's going on in the system that is like, why aren't our children getting the same education, right? Depending on what neighborhood they're in. And that's why, like, it's really important, right, to kind of like, if I just take it all the way back and digress, when we talk about paying attention to who is sitting on your child's education board, right, and what they believe in and how like they're using and allocating the funds that they've received, and like that whole domino effect and that circle of life that then keeps going, and it keeps continuing to perpetuate like harm and disparity. So that's a whole different conversation, but I just think it's kind of important to kind of like be honest and say, like, why do we need this type of legislation? Like, how do we get here? Like, why aren't our children receiving the same education? Like, why are certain groups being admitted to college at higher rates, right? There's a whole bunch of things that we really kind of would need to digest in another conversation to really talk about the gaps in our educational system, which, is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I was like a victim of the system, right? I didn't have a very good education. So I don't want to spend too much more. I don't want to spend any more time on this prop because but it's really important. And again, if you guys have questions or if anything was unclear, let us know. But I guess we can move on to the next prop.
All right, so next on our list, we wanted to talk about Prop 21, which is a proposition that expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. And this is an initiative statute. We know it wasn't put on the ballot by the legislature because the legislature has a law on the books that restricts local governments from enacting rent control. So what rent control is when a local government decides to cap increases in rent. So every year, your landlord, nonstop, it seems, maybe with the exception of this year, will come to you and say, rent is going up. And it is just a fact of life that they like to increase rent. And sometimes those numbers are outrageous. And recently in California's history, they have been very, very outrageous. In some places, we're paying twice as much in rent as we did 10 or 15 years ago. And nobody is making twice as much money as they were making 10 or 15 years ago. And so one of the ways to deal with that would be to build more houses, to use the market to lower prices and to put pressure on landlords. Another way is through government control, through rent control measures. Now, right now, local governments can do limited rent control on older properties, um, and we see measures like that mostly in big cities, not so much in rural areas or in smaller cities. And what this proposition would do is repeal the law that's on the books right now, restricting local governments from doing this, and would instead amend it to set up to where there is any property older than 15 years old, a local government can set up rent control on it. When you're a new tenant, for the first 3 years, they can raise rents on you up to 15%. Even if the local government set that rate lower. So for the first 3 years, they can up it. After that, you would have to follow that rent control ordinance. This would exempt small property owners, so ones that only have 2 or fewer properties. They would be exempt from the rent control measures. And over that, it would it would just basically give power to local governments to enact these price controls on rental units.
Yeah, and I mean, I just like I kind of always want to kind of just think, encourage everyone to think a lot about this proposition, and think about okay, let me just see how to say this. Right now, the reality of the situation, like John pointed out, is that like prices keep going up, but we're seeing overall our wages are not going up to match that. We have people that are on fixed income, and the rent in California is just astronomical. Again, if you don't think that that's a problem, and you don't have that worry about how people are going to be able to survive, right? Not survive, but continue to pay their rent. Like when the prices are going up, if we look at the minimum wage, right, and we're still advocating and trying to raise that, like it's becoming a little bit excessive. There are great landlords out there. I will tell you really quick, I live in a place where my landlord, he believes in keeping his rent very, very fair and very low. So I always joke with people, I haven't really paid like real people's rent in California I've lived here since 2004. But my landlord actually turned the property over to a property management company, and I have seen my rent increase by $380 in the last 2 years. So, and there is a lot of like, because his rent was considered under market, right? He can raise it a little bit higher each time over the 5% max that, usually, anyway, I don't want to talk about that. But my point is like, I'm so far, okay. But I then think about my neighbor who is on a fixed income, right? She's on disability, and, she has no option, right? If the rent keeps going up, she's not going to be able to afford it. And so those are kind of some things that you really want to think about with that proposition, and just really understand like what the average income is in California comparable to the average rent, right? Because it's pretty staggering to know that how people are surviving, right? And today in 2020, and also just keeping in mind, we can't talk about the global pandemic and the fact that I forget the numbers of so many people in the next couple of months unless something changes from our elected officials because they're not able to pay their rent. So there's a lot of factors that you always want to try to weigh when you're deciding if you want to be a yay or nay on these propositions. And what I think and how I try to look at it is I vote not just for myself. I'm thinking about kids, even though I don't have kids. I'm thinking about what's best for them, and I'm thinking about my personal morals, values, and beliefs. And what I really want to see for everyone, and I also think about, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and just, understanding like, what does that look like and how do we get there, right? When we're making these decisions on the ballot. So anyway, that's my little soapbox for that proposition. So let's keep it moving.
Yeah, and I wanted to say on Prop 21 again, it doesn't actually create any rent control ordinances. It doesn't do anything but give the place where you live, the local government, that city council or that county board of supervisors, the option of implementing it. So it's not the end of the story if you vote yes. It is just giving them the power to work on these problems that they're seeing in their communities. And so that was Prop 41. Not to tell you how to vote on it, but you can hear how I'm going to vote on it.
I know. You can hear how I'm going to vote on it too, but neither here nor there.
And then we're moving on to Prop 23. And this proposition is one of those ones that isn't as understandable to most people because it's about dialysis clinics. So it adds more state requirements for kidney dialysis clinics and puts in a requirement for on-site medical professionals. And this was a bill that was sponsored actually by insurance companies looking out to lower patient costs and to improve service, I think was what they said was their goal. And they put out this initiative statute, enough people signed on, it's on the ballot. One of the reasons why this is a little unclear to people is because not all of us have personal experience with dialysis clinics. Out of the I wanted to say 300 dialysis clinics in California, about 75% of them, about 3/4, are owned by two companies. And so they kind of have their own little oligopoly of setup. And so the legislature and on the ballot, you'll see these initiatives, and it's really about regulating these two companies who basically don't have to provide any more service than what they can get away with because there's no one else to go to. Usually in a community, if you need a dialysis center, you're going to the only one that's near you. And so people don't really have a chance to search the market for better prices or better service or a better product. And so they get stuck with whatever's there. And so what this would do is it would increase regulation on these dialysis centers that in the hopes of improving patient care and lowering patient costs. It has the potential to affect the profits or the sustainability of those dialysis centers. In other words, maybe these two companies will go out of business, or smaller ones will go out of business. There is always that chance that as you increase regulation on an industry, maybe that industry will buckle and fold. And so those are the kind of two concerns that you want to keep in mind, is that this would hopefully increase patient care basically at the cost of this industry's profits. Or on the other hand, it might take too much of the industry's profits and ultimately patient care goes down to zero when they close a clinic.
And, this one was really hard for me. I did a lot. I don't know if you guys know, or it might not matter, but I used to work in healthcare on the administrative end, processing claims and understanding like all of that process. So I think the important thing to talk about is that a large majority of disadvantaged neighborhoods are where there could be possibly a threat to the dialysis centers, because you hear like, oh, they want to require doctors and nurses in the facilities. That's a good thing, right? And it is. I mean, that's a great thing. But what happens is increased costs. And if you look at who is the percentage of people that are receiving healthcare, it's a lot of people that are on Medicare and Medi-Cal that are receiving dialysis. And we don't even want to get into a conversation about the payments that they receive and the cost of having healthcare in California. And so adding physicians and nurses in the dialysis center increases the cost to run the business. And so there is a lot of groups that oppose this legislation, because while it is a good thing, they believe that it will impact and harm and cause dialysis centers to close in more disadvantaged socioeconomic neighborhoods. And so that's kind of some things to keep in mind, as like John talked about earlier when we first started the proposition. You kind of want to look at who is opposing it, who is for it, and really kind of think about what the impact will be. And so I kind of had to dig a little deeper to kind of realize, because at first I was like, well, yeah, having a doctor is good. And trying to figure out how have we had a lot of inherent problems from not having a doctor on staff, and where is this coming from? So those are all kind of things that you want to think about when you're looking at this legislation, and really kind of I think it's really good for you guys to know what is dialysis, and how many people are impacted by that. Not saying you don't know, but for years I didn't know until I had a family member that required. I used to take them to their dialysis appointments. And so those are just some things to think about on Proposition 23. Is there anything else, John, you wanted to add?
Well, I would say that I mean, I don't want to talk too badly about this one specifically, but I overall always am weary about ballot propositions that are trying to fix complex problems, because ballot propositions are not complex things. They're usually very simple ideas. They're something that we're all voting on. But the problem of our dialysis centers, not having enough of them, not having good enough service, not having the industry basically set up in a way that serves the community better. Maybe even the fact that it's set up as an industry instead of as universal health care provided by our publicly funded tax dollars. That sort of conversation is where I want to see reforms, is on a more complex, a more comprehensive way of looking at this that might be better in the legislature than on the ballot. And that isn't to say that this might not be a great solution. It just isn't. It isn't convincing to me to approach such a complex problem with these simple kind of solutions that go on a ballot.
Great points, John. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything additional because I think that's great content for people to think about as they're making these decisions. Yeah. So which prop do we have next?
Okay, and so that was all the props that we had planned to discuss. Except for there are prompts that we haven't discussed. So first, I wanted to ask if anybody's in the audience that they had a specific proposition that we haven't talked about in the last couple of weeks, that you're like, I don't know what's going on with this. Can you help me? If you have that, that's great. Else, I'm going to pull up. We're just gonna go through them real quick as soon as I find the button. I'm a technological genius,
Yes, he is. And I will keep an eye on the chat. So I think someone just kind of joined again. So where we are right now, we've wrapped up all of the propositions that we had planned on discussing, but there's a couple that we did not talk about. So if you have a question about a particular proposition, I will keep my 4 eyes on the chat, and then I'll let John kind of lead us through a couple of propositions that we didn't really talk about.
Okay, and just to go through the list again, we did talk last week, and you can check on our videos about Proposition 14, Proposition 15, and today we talked about Proposition 16. I don't think we mentioned Proposition 17.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Which was one that we actually did want to go in depth on, but we were prioritizing
Yeah.
into the complicated ones, because this is an interesting topic to us. Is Prop 17 restores the right to vote after completion of a prison term. And so right now in California, once you're done with prison and done with parole, then you have your voting rights restored. While you're in prison or on parole, you can't vote. But once you're done with parole, you are good to vote. What this amendment would do is those people on parole would get their voting rights back. And so as soon as you're done with your prison sentence, it doesn't matter if you're going to community supervision or parole, or you're just completely free. At that point, once you leave the prison, you are eligible to vote. And this is something that I support in general. This isn't really a partisan issue. This is just kind of fixing an error in our Constitution, fixing a mistake, I think, because democracy is about suffrage. We're the Voter Access Project. We're always going to support suffrage, more people voting. Like if it was up to me, the people in prison would be voting too. And so of course I want the people on parole to vote. I don't know what the arguments are against it, because I probably won't read them, but I just wanted to briefly talk on that.
So one thing I do want to add really quick is that for you guys who may have family members or friends that could have possibly been convicted of a crime and don't know that they can vote after they have completed their parole as of right now. But I believe, and John, please correct me if I'm wrong, they have to petition. They have to, re-register to vote. So,
yeah. Oh, I was about to say you were wrong, but then you corrected yourself.
Yeah, I corrected myself.
Like in other states, you might have to petition somebody to give you permission to. You just have to register, just like everybody else.
Yes.
Even if you were registered before you went to prison, your registration was cut off, and so you just have to register. And at this point, you just have to go in person.
Yeah, and so that's just really, really important. And I also kind of want to I said this in one of the lives, but I'm going to repeat it. If you are currently right now sitting in jail and you have not been convicted of a crime, you can vote in California. Just so you know, if you have not been convicted of a crime right now, you're eligible to vote in California. And there is a process in place to allow you to be able to cast your ballot. So I just want to put it out there. So Mickey said, let's talk about 17. So Mickey, did you have any other questions about Prop 17? If she might not be here anymore, but anyway, if she does, she can pop in or whatever.
This does affect thousands of people at any given time. And it's an important step to just improving democracy.
Yay, viva la democracy. So yes, okay, let's keep going.
And then Prop 18, another democracy reform, which is letting 17-year-olds that will be 18 by the general election vote in the primary election. And that's a little bit complicated to say out loud, but basically, if you're going to turn 18 in a year, in that specific year, like if you were turning 18 anytime in 2020 before November 4th, then you can vote in the election in March, even if you're 17 in March. This is again, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm definitely voting yes on this. Civic engagement really starts with the young, and that's where we're failing. I showed the chart earlier that old people, they vote, young people don't. And one way to fix that is to get them while they're young, get them engaged, make sure their first voting experience is a good one, and that they're able to navigate these things. A lot of people who didn't vote when they were young just didn't have that experience, that maybe their parents didn't vote, maybe their friends didn't vote, their family didn't vote. And so it was really hard. It's really hard to navigate and jump into and become a voter, especially later in life. But those kids, we got to get them voting. We got to get them registered.
Yeah.
That's right, Mickey.
And to add just a couple of layers to that, like the the kids can actually work the polls. That sounded okay. Work at the
Work the
election
polls.
polls as early as 16. And I just really kind of want to regurgitate what John is saying when we talk about democracy, right? Legislation is being passed that impacts these kids. And also you want to think about if they're going to turn 18, right? We want to allow them to, I know, Mickey, I'm like working at the polls. We want to allow them, right? Because if they are not allowed to vote in the general, right? Like on decisions that, like things that are going to be on the ballot when they're 18, that's kind of an unequal balance, right? We're silencing their voice. And, again, all throughout this process, right? When we're voting, we're making decisions that impact the livelihood of our children. And also you want to talk about like building character traits and like habits, right? You want to teach them young, right? Get them involved. And then they are more than likely to continue that on and pass those traditions to their children, right? Like that is one thing for me, despite how I grew up, I saw my mom from a very young age, going to the polls, the election polls. I didn't see her going to the polls and casting her ballot, right? And so even when I didn't know what I was doing, right, I remember that I saw my parent like engaging in democracy. And so that is, I'm really grateful that she set that example for me. And so I just really, again, this is a no-brainer, right? Like if our kids are being allowed to work and support and help out in the elections, why would we deny them a chance of having a voice when they're 18 and whatever is going to be on that ballot is impacting them? So yeah, I'm not going to even hide the fact that I'm all about that. Yes, on 18. So let's keep it going, John.
All right. And then we haven't talked yet about Prop 19, which is another property tax constitutional amendment. This one is an exemption from property taxes, lowering property taxes for people that are over 55 and the people that they might inherit their property when those people die. And so this is one of those where, on the one hand, it discourages what happens right now, which is people are very not willing to sell their property or move because they have such a low tax basis. So their property taxes are really low, but if they move into a new place, then they're taxed at the value of that property instead of at their old Prop 13 property tax rate that we were talking about last week. So moving becomes this thing that I just can't afford to do because then I would lose my tax benefit. And what this would do would be to solve that for them by giving them a loophole to where, you can move and keep your tax benefit. So that's a reason why people would vote yes for this. The reason why people would vote no is because it's basically lowering taxes on people with property. So wealthy people would be paying less taxes. The people that inherit from wealthy people, the trust fund kids would be getting out of a lot of taxes. And so it just all depends on where you sit on that. And of course, I'm sure if they could afford it, they would put up commercials with grandmas trying to convince you that
grandmas. I'm telling you, them damn grandmas. Woof, woof, woof. I don't have anything to add on that one. Good job, buddy.
And then Proposition 20 we talked about, it increases mandatory sentences and tougher on crime. Tough on crime. Prop 21 we just talked about, rent control. Prop 22 we talked about last week with the app-based companies, the Ubers, and they're wanting to have independent contractor loophole put into law. Prop 23. We just talked about the state requirements for kidney dialysis. Prop 24 is something that we didn't talk about. This one amends consumer privacy laws. And like looking at the description and everything about it sounds great. This is one of those where I kind of didn't do a deep dive because I know the people that oppose it. and that's like the ACLU, who who generally they spend all of their time fighting fights like privacy and making sure it works out for us. And a friend of mine, Kevin Baker, who's the director of the ACLU's Center on Progress, he states that in the ballot argument against, that this is just a handout to tech companies. It actually lowers California's rights and increases the ability of these big tech companies basically to make money off of us. And that's why this bill was sponsored by them. That's why it's there. And that kind of makes sense to me. And so, like I said, I didn't do a deep dive, so it's one of these that we don't have a lot of details on. I just wanted to share that detail that the ACLU says to vote no on this, and I would trust them.
Yeah, and also I'm just gonna I want to amplify what you said about the slimy tech companies that are able to monetize our data and profit off of us and target us based on our searches and all of those things. It's really, if you don't know and if you don't understand how that works, you should really it's kind of eye-opening. I just kind of learned how that works in the last five years, about how despicable I'm going to say it is, that how we're targeted and how our information is used. So that's really all I have to say on that. And then I guess, John, I'll let you wrap it up with the last one.
Oh yeah, well, Prop 25 we talked about on Saturday. You should check out the video that we made. It's about bail reform, and it is a complex issue.
So complicated.
And you have to vote yes or no on it, or just leave it blank. I guess that's another option. But you should do your research, and because not only is it an important topic for us to vote on, but in exploring the details of this, you'll learn a lot about our criminal justice system, a lot about how politics works in California. And so it's a very interesting proposition to bite into.
Yes. And so, oh my gosh. So with that being said, well, we did it, John. We've discussed everything with you guys that for now that we want to discuss. And again, I just want to say to those that are watching now or be watching later, we appreciate you guys all taking the time to listen to us and engage with us. And we are not going away. We're just kind of figuring out what is next. If you have questions, John is still going to be monitored in the mailbox. You can always email us at voteraccess.org. And I'm sorry, info@voteraccess.org. And it's right there. Thank gosh for John. And ask questions. So I will tell you guys that what is next? I'm going to be a broken record, and John's probably going to be like, let me mute her.
I can mute you? Is that
it? Yeah, I know, like the presidential debates, I would tell you, engage, find something that you're passionate about. I mean, there's so much going on in our country. There's so much going on in our state that we really need to be intentional about our knowledge. And I also kind of wanted to say at the end, because this is separate from what I really wanted to talk about, is that, we live in a society right now with a lot of disinformation, and that disinformation is coming on both sides, and John very eloquently talked about what it is to be nonpartisan. Absolutely, and in our city, Mickey. And so what I want to say is I would encourage, no matter what your political beliefs are, to kind of take a step back and stay away from Fox News, right? Stay away from CNN, MSNBC, and pick up some papers, even if it's 5 minutes a day, and really try to educate yourself, right? For me, I I'm a fan of, I like NPR. I think they are a little bit, you know, uh, to the right, I'm sorry, to the to the left, but they do a good job of giving like information. I love to watch PBS News, but I also just like to read. I like to just kind of go to like facts, and maybe John and I can work on giving you some guides on how you can look and try to find like non I mean, we all have a bias, like we inherently all have a bias, but a lot of the news and information is just so egregious, right? And we really just encourage you. I don't want to speak for John, but I know he feels the same. Encourage you to kind of really empower and educate yourself. There are targeted attempts to provide disinformation to confuse people about what's going on right now in our city. And, again, just don't buy into the narrative that it is coming from one side only. It's coming from both sides. It's coming. I personally believe, and I'm not going to talk about it, I think it's a little bit more egregious on one side. And this is a little bit outrageous on one side, but knowledge is power. And so I'm going to stop talking when I say this again. What's going on in your cities matter. What's going on in your county matters. What's going on in your state matters. But also, when you see on the news people in Texas standing in lines for hours to vote, and you see right now as we are having this conversation, Alabama just passed legislation to prevent curbside voting for people that have disabilities. Those things matter, and we must call attention to it. We must call attention to atrocities that are going on in other countries. What's happening in Nigeria? There's so much happening, and our news, right? What they do is they pick this. I mean, I'm gonna just say it, like our president's like bank account, right? And they play it over and over and over again when there is huge things happening that the average American person has no idea, because they pick something, they hold on to it, and they just want to sensationalize and get a bunch of clickbait. And I'm not saying that issue is not important, but they're so lopsided in their reporting, and it's getting a little bit out of hand. So I'm going to stop there because, again, I feel really strongly about that. But I just really want to encourage you guys all to really, really find out what's going on in our country, our cities, our state, and do something, right? We all can do something. We can vote, we can volunteer, we can phone bank, and we cannot stop no matter what happens on November 3rd. That's all I got on that. I'm sorry.
No, that's excellent. I almost don't want to say my call to arms, which is connect with people, both in your community. Talk to people. Like we have Facebook groups now. You can talk to people on your Facebook groups. You can also connect with experts and real sources of knowledge. You can sidestep news altogether. Like you can talk to people like us. Like I know a lot about elections and how they run, and Kim knows a lot about elections and how they run. and you found us on that. And there's similar experts in all kinds of fields that you can talk to now. That we have that kind of connectivity to where you don't have to just casually take in the news, that you can go out and seek out those sources and help people in your community understand things. And so I'm very thankful to Kim especially, and to all of you for doing this and for watching this. And yeah, just thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And we'll see you soon. We don't know what kind of content, but we'll see you soon. And thank you guys all for your time, and for your feedback and your engagement. It has been a blast, but I'm happy to take a break. Hi, Mickey. Thank you. Thank you. I do want to say before John ends it, for those of you guys who've showed up for us and engaged, I'm saying we, because I'm speaking for John. We are so thankful to you. If there is content that you want to see us produce, let us know. Tell your friends about the Voter Access Project YouTube channel. My channel is just kind of an extension of what we're doing here, but I will be posting other content and just, spread the word. We're here, and we want to make a difference in our communities, and that's why we're here. So I'm going to stop because I'm getting actually emotional because this work is something that I'm so passionate about. And John is thanking me, but this is actually the last thing I'm going to say. John has been, I'm not a religious person at all, but a godsend. I had a vision that I was scared to execute, and John came along and he just put his sleeves up and he dug right in and he helped me execute these lives. And I would not have been able to do it without him. He has been a great partner, a great source of knowledge. And he has taught me that I want to tell you guys that it's okay if you don't know. It is okay if you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything about how this works, but I'm committed to learning, and I am committed. He is a good egg. He is a very good egg, Mickey. I am committed to learning and being honest with you guys. And there will be times where I'll make a mistake or I might misspeak, but I won't be afraid to let you know, because you guys all deserve the truth. You deserve the facts, and that's what we're here for. And I'm just really thankful to John. And now, God bless him, he's stuck with me for like ever, So he is definitely a good egg. And I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop. So have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
And have a good night.